Okay. So today's conversation is all about reactivity, and it's about creating freedom from slavery to intense emotional reactions. So it's all about acquiring those tools to help you snap out of it and respond intelligently instead of reacting regrettably. So we're going to learn how to remain calm in intense situations instead of getting to the breaking point and having all of our politeness and respect and self-control go out the window. It's going to be about learning how to deal with others who are being reactive, how to develop emotional discretion. You know, we want to honor emotions, but the emotions that count, because a lot of our emotions are inappropriate to begin with. So we'll get into that and creating a greater understanding there, and learn not to give into reactive urges, so that instead of letting blind emotion enslave us, we can be the master and make wiser choices with our life. So that's what today is going to be all about. And we got a bunch of amazing sections we're going to go into with life-changing topics and life-changing wisdom. And I can tell you that having coached this subject before, it is a life-changing conversation if this has ever been a relevant issue in life. So first thing I want to talk about is, have you ever noticed how people prioritize outward freedom? They want freedom of speech. Okay. They want freedom from vaccine mandates, or, they want freedom to travel and explore and freedom to marry who they choose. And they want financial freedom. Have you all noticed that? How big of a focus that is?
Yep. Yeah. Freedom.
Absolutely. People are obsessed with freedom.
The William Wallace effect.
Yeah, exactly. Braveheart reference. And don't you think it would be pretty shameful to just let some sort of a hostile country come in and take away all your freedoms without trying to defend yourself or fight back in some way? Wouldn't that just be shameful to just let them come in and just take it all over? So now here's something to think about. What are your thoughts on inner freedom? What does inner freedom mean to you? Charmaine, any thoughts on what inner freedom means?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we're going with it. Relating more to our own personal decisions like that, or I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be freedom from bad moods, right?
Okay.
Freedom from excessive neediness, freedom to have inner peace when we want to, freedom from some of the inner conflicts we have.
So it's more about having those decisions in the forefront of your brain instead of succumbing to kind of almost instinctual, like bad habits in a way, of the way we react to things, or letting our reactions control us.
Yeah. So freedom from being enslaved by the suffering emotions that we go along with.
Go along with is a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So in many ways, we've been enslaved by a hostile opponent. And we don't understand, and we surrender ourselves to impulsive urges and reactive energies that take over our lives and make us say and do regrettable things. And we have no shame in that. We allow ourselves to be puppets to whatever reactive ideas come to mind, jerked this way and that, and we have no shame in that. But we have to ask ourselves, do we want to live under the mastership of the reactive mind, or do we want to fight back for our inner freedom? And that's what this conversation is all about. So let's discuss what reactivity is. What does reactivity mean to you if you had to define it? Coots, what do you think? If you what is it?
It's your initial reactivity. It's your initial emotion to something without any other logical thinking with it, or any kind of time in between. So it's a very quick and instant emotional response. How's that?
Perfect. I love it. So basically, like acting without thinking about it first, and acting with a lack of judgment.
Yeah, like screw you, buddy. Actually, I didn't mean that. Sorry.
Acting with a lack. Chris, any thoughts on what reactivity means to you?
I like the part that you brought up in the beginning. And when you think about what Viktor Frankl said in Man's Search for Meaning, He
Yep.
talked about in his situation that people could take away his liberty, but they couldn't take away his freedom.
Yes.
So he could still control how he responded to things, how he felt about his things, his own emotions. And really, that allowed him to really focus on that. And he focused on how other people around him looked at that as well. That the
Mhm.
ones that survived were the ones that were able to manage their internal world better than others. And so I think when we're talking about reactivity, we're talking about how how clean and organized our internal world already is, so that when these weeds or attacks occur, we can handle them with much more grace, maturity, and thoughtfulness, as opposed with pure emotion. People who act with pure emotions are wounded people. They have their own pain and issues. And this is not to put them down, but to realize that they too are suffering in a way that they don't know how to manage or how to handle or cure. And they're people who are going through their own processes. That's why they can't handle an attack like that, because they don't know how to manage it within themselves internally. It
Yep.
shows more about their internal world than it does about what's externally going on.
Yep. Yeah, perfect. Very well said. And I love that Viktor Frankl example because, of course, Viktor Frankl had his outer freedoms taken away. He was a doctor of psychology that was put into the Auschwitz Nazi death camp. But in that situation, he took control of what things mean to him. And he found an inner freedom that gave him the strength to endure and survive the harsh situation. Thankfully so, because he's gone on to inspire many of us with his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which helps people find meaning in life. But reactivity is really, it's almost like you could also think of it as the adult form of a child's temper tantrum when they don't get their way, right? It's like carrying an emotion to an extreme limit without thinking about it first or without using discretion. You know, it could be an automatic, exaggerated response based on unthinking, unexamined emotion. So that's really what it is. It's just completely getting carried away with it. So let's do some examples of reactivity. Okay. A lot of times, I'll go first. A lot of times, reactivity is a matter of taking it out on the wrong people. For example, somebody at a restaurant might get really angry at the waitress and yell at her because of the service is slow when really it has nothing to do with her. The kitchen is backed up. You know, they're short staffed because somebody's sick. And, you know, to be reactive is to just take it all out on whoever without using that discernment, right? So being angry at a waitress could be an example of reactivity. Charmaine, can you think of an example of reactivity?
I can think of lots of examples. A lot of times it's misunderstandings between people. You know, you're trying to communicate something to someone, they don't have the same viewpoint or have all the same information or facts. And so they're reacting as though, you know, from their viewpoint. And really, a lot of the emotion in that conversation is because each side's not feeling heard, because they each don't have the full set of facts.
Yeah. Yeah. So it could be coming to a quick negative judgment and then, you know, embarrassing them in front of other people on your wrong judgment and doing character tarnishment and slander, or sending a really inappropriate text message to somebody without getting the facts straight first, you know, and being disrespectful in that way. So there's a lot of ways that could play out too, right?
And I think once you get into that mindset, everybody's so busy communicating their perspective, they stop listening.
Oh yeah, they're just
so it's even harder
to view rather than trying to understand. Yeah, I mean, if you ever try to reason with somebody who's at a heightened state of emotional intensity, it's very hard to reason with them, and that part of the brain that's open to learning gets shut down when people get stressed like that, right? So, excellent example. Coots, can you think of an example, anything in particular of reactivity and how it plays out in the human story?
Sure, just like Charmaine was saying, it happens all the time if you're paying attention, I guess. And the one that knocks me is a few months back driving I was with a buddy in the car and just had to pass the guy. I'm like, oh, wait, we should have turned. I mean, you know what? I'm going to zoom up in front of him. Not the best way to do it, but I felt bad. I got in front of him. That's not the best. This guy zooms up next to me. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Right. And he starts with, what the beep, buddy? And I look at him like, sure, I'm so sorry. I was very confused there as well. It seemed like we were really cramming. I was really genuine. And he was like, hey, man, I'm so sorry. I lost it there. And he literally came out of that like ready to beat me up. And because I showed genuine care, he kind of reciprocated. And my buddy next to me is like, how the hell did that just happen? I'm like, dude, I just completely apologized. I completely apologized. I said it was all my fault. I really didn't mean to. It was just an accident. I'm just a human. I hope you're not hurt. And he switched from wanting to rip my face off to, reciprocating with some kindness. I thought that was a good example.
It's such a great example because road rage is a common example of reactivity, and people have perspective. So they'll put everyone's lives at risk by driving crazy to try to intimidate somebody or get them back. But your example shows how you keeping your peace and calm help diffuse them. Right. So that's a reactivity story with a happy ending.
Yeah, that's for it could have gone a lot worse. Like, yeah, screw you too, buddy. Just,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. And you see, well, I'll get into some other examples in a second. Chris, can you think of an example to add to our collection here of reactivity, how it plays out?
I can. I had something similar to him where I was parked in a crowded area, opened up my car door, I hit someone's car by accident. And he said, hey, you hit my car. And Mom, I'm sorry, kind of thing. And because I take care of my car. And I really popped into this Tony Robbins thing. I said, I can tell you take good care of your car. I can take one look at your car and say you love that car because it does look clean. It does look organized. And I'm not just saying that. It looks that way truly. I said, yeah, I really do like my car. And he started to explain what he liked about his car. And it was an Infiniti G20. I had one of those. So I could actually relate to him how he felt about his car because I had one before as well. And I think when you're dealing with someone who is in reaction, I think once they feel that their feelings have been acknowledged at least or validated, that dials them down a notch because they feel like they've been heard. And that's why a lot of them go into this program. So they don't feel like they're being heard by the other person. But once you acknowledge, yes, that what I did was wrong to you, you were offended, that it affected you. And then you come up with a compliment or an apology, there's really nowhere else to go. Because you're not upping the ante. You're actually de-escalating it by apologizing or saying, give them a compliment.
Yeah.
Or you look really angry. So as they're trying to amp it up, you're amping it down, and they're not used to people doing that strategy in their lives mostly. So that's why you can get away with it, because the people around them react in that same way that they're reacting. To them, that's normal.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd say a good way to look at this and simplify it is people coming at you with this combative energy, and you bring more of a cooperative, compassionate energy. Right.
Yes.
And so that can help harmonize a situation, which is all great examples, and there's many examples of this. You could have like an enraged fan at a sports event yelling and angry at the ref or umpire because they think they know better, even though they're sitting way up in the nosebleeds and the umpire's like right there in front of the action. It's like, hold on a second, like maybe your point of view is not so right. There's also like, people having too much to drink and getting overly emotional and reactive and inconsolable and taking it out on other people. You have people blowing up on Facebook with their negative opinions on things and nasty comments and everything else. So this is all over the place. Now that we've kind of clarified what it looks like and how it plays out, we want to get clear on why we should go to war with this tendency inside of us. Why should we fight this battle against reactivity? What is it costing us when we give in to this habit? And then we'll get into how to overcome it. Okay, so we want to think of the deepest, darkest reasons to go to battle with this tendency. And the reason is that most of us will just do things the easy way unless it's really painful. And so it's like most people won't try to deal with reactive tendencies until they really get clear on why it's a bad idea to go along with it. And it's kind of like now as we enter the Christmas season and you hear like a Christmas story with Scrooge, it's kind of like you need to have your Scrooge moment and see the deepest, darkest places this tendency might take you in life so that you can change now so that that future doesn't become your reality, right? So we want to come up with all the reasons we can why it's a bad idea to go along with this. Charmaine, do you want to start us off? Anything you can think of. Why is it why should we fight the battle against reactivity?
I think it can damage relationships. And the thing is, you might be able to apologize, but just because you've apologized, it doesn't repair things. And, you know, especially if you keep repeating it, a lot of times you hear people say, well, I apologize for that. But just because you apologize doesn't mean it didn't happen and there isn't harm there. And each time you do it, I think it gets harder and harder. And I don't know that you can ever get the relationship back 100% to where it was.
Yes, yeah, and that's a good point. And there is such thing as insincere apology, and not truly trying to make right or wrong. And a lot of times, if people are going along with reactive tendencies, they just do things the easy, natural way, and so they really only want a resolution as long as it's easy for them to achieve it. And
Well,
it's
and even if they meant it, you know, that's the thing. They still think, well, I apologize, so it's okay. You know,
Yeah.
I understand what I was wrong, but after the fact is you still did that harm. It doesn't take away the harm that you did.
Yeah, try to make right your wrong. Don't just try to get off easy with a get out of jail free. I said the magic words. I'm free,
Yes.
and I can get away with whatever I want, right?
Yes.
Because I apologize, so you're unreasonable and you're going crazy,
Yes.
and I'm going to tell everyone you're the crazy one because I apologized, right? Yeah, of course.
Now reactivity about the apology, right?
So, many prized friendships have been destroyed by a few thoughtless words. And that's one of the reasons why, what's at stake here. Coots, any examples you can think of why we should fight the battle against reactivity?
That constant pursuit of higher level thinking would come to my mind, thinking, this is what you do when you were a child. We say that, right? So why we should be above that when we're a little older. The whole be the bigger person comes to mind. I love that saying of, boys react and men respond, taking a breath or two to sort of before you say something. So those are kind of the things that come to my mind when
great.
I think not to remind, or, and of course it ruins things for sure, right?
Great. And it really comes down to something called emotional maturity. So when you say boys react, men respond, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just the saying that stuck with me when I was younger, actually.
Yeah. So, and I think, really to summarize that point, it kind of it tempts us to the path of evil. Because people say do bad things a lot more when they're in a reactive state, right? So to allow ourselves to get into that state is to really open the door to evil suggestions that might come into our consciousness. So how many violent crimes was reactivity a part of it?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. A lot of atrocious things, reactivity was there, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Chris, do you have any thoughts on why we should go to battle with this tendency?
I think looking at it from a battle point of view, I think it's more, again, keeping your own internal world clean to begin with so the battle doesn't occur. So I think it has more to do with keeping your own peace of mind. This is why meditation is so important, is because it allows your mind to remain calm when these strong emotions occur. And these things can be triggered by things in the outside world. And like you're talking about people who commit violence and things like that, they've already been triggered by the outside world, but don't know how to control their internal world well enough to prevent them from getting to having escalated to the point of violence.
Yep.
Because when you look at when someone has a violent interaction, there were a lot of steps before that actually happened that could have de-escalated or could have redirected that entire situation before it got to that point. But the two people involved or multiple people involved need to want to go in that direction because everyone else is being triggered in that same way as well.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
So there's a lot more going on with the group.
Love it. And you remind me of just the whole idea of being ruler of your mental kingdom, keeping it peaceful and clean inside, because it makes life happier and easier. When we're better off, everyone else is better off, right? And
but also you're ready for an attack if you are mentally clean and mentally organized, so that when the attack does come, you are ready for it. People who are not that focused when an attack comes, they're not ready for it. And that's part of the pandemonium that occurs that escalates the issue, or escalates the conflict.
yeah,
They're not ready for it.
reserve capacity when hard times in life come.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And to add to these great suggestions, I would say that it creates pain for those we care about, because when we aren't happy and we're reactive and emotionally distraught, those who love us feel our pain, right? It screws up those who follow our example. So those who look up to us are likely to follow our example. So, an example could be if you scream at your kids and yell at them as a way to get cooperation, then they're likely to scream at their kids because they just think that's the way you're supposed to do it, right? So we pass it on. Life is also very unsatisfying when we can't control our mind. With the wrong attitude, everything can be made irritating and exhausting. Even a kindly smile from a stranger can be offensive and triggering if you have the wrong attitude, right? So, and it distorts our reality. So everything gets distorted when we're triggered and reactive. We jump to all kinds of false assumptions and judgments. When we lose our inner peace, it raises our level of delusion. We lie to ourselves, we see things wrongly, we take wrong points of view, wrong conclusions come to us, and we create more of a mess and a bigger problem ultimately. It's also like a form of self-torture. It's self-destructive. Seneca said, those who lack self-control live disoriented and disturbed lives, right? And another thing is that it gets worse over time and it affects every aspect of our life. We get really good at getting worked up about things. We get even better at disturbing ourselves. We get good at finding all kinds of angles to get offended and feel troubled, and we store these perspectives inside so it's easier to access them and get reactive in future. We literally create our own monster inside of us. Have you ever met anyone that was a gold medal athlete at getting bothered about stuff? Show your hands. Have you ever met anyone who was a gold medal athlete? Yeah. What do you like to be around? Are they a lot of fun to be around? And imagine how fun it would be to be them. Right? And just to think back, and this isn't about pointing fingers at other people, think back about the times in our lives when we were gold medal athletes at getting worked up. How fun was that? Like living in that mental reality. It's like we become like emotional burn victims, so touchy and sensitive to everything. Right? So it's a whole return on investment. Intelligent people do something called a cost-benefit analysis, but being emotionally reactive is like 100% cost with very little, if any, benefit. True freedom comes when we actually admit that and decide it's a good idea to grow up and evolve past these tendencies, right? And a lot of this has to do with getting wrapped up in the ego. When the ego gets involved, we make terrible decisions. So we just need to decide once and for all, we'll be the master, not letting the reactive urges master us. Because it is a big traitor in our mental kingdom. It is not our friend to go along with that. Because a lot of times people will argue that they use this reactive energy and anger to be successful and get motivated. But it's not a wise way to do it because we lack judgment and discernment when we do this. We make lots of wrong choices and bad decisions. And, it burns us out in the long term. There's a better motivational fuel. It's called fueling up on love rather than anger, and doing things from a deeper sense of love and gratitude and wanting to give back. So, now there are 4 understandings. We're going to start talking about the solutions now. There are 4 understandings we must grasp in the battle against reactivity. 4 big ones. Okay. And so I'm going to go through them and we'll chat about each of the 4. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to totally have these grasped and mastered after today. All I want everyone to do is just sort of understand what I'm talking about so you can ponder it and sort of let it sink in over time. Just think about it. Number 1, all problems originate on the inside, even though it looks like it originated on the outside. So all problems originate on the inside, even though it looks like it originated on the outside. So anyone want to share their thoughts on that one there?
Oh, that's totally true.
Okay. Chris, I love it. I can't see. I know you're you're on the other side of the room, but I can hear you there.
On the other side of the road. No, so that's totally true.
Okay.
Your emotions, how you handle your work, how you handle everything builds up or down towards either great things happening or disastrous things happening. And these are all based on your small actions over days, weeks, years, months, years. And yeah, so you are responsible for everything in your world. You're also responsible for everything in your internal world. But if you can control those things or make those things better, the things around you will grow and improve.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if you're looking for things to fall off a cliff, they will fall off a cliff eventually if that's what you're visualizing. If you're visualizing and being successful every day despite the bumps, successful people have bumps in their lives. And you have to welcome those bumps and realize that those bumps are there to help you grow and become the person that you want to be. I was close to that this year. This was a make or break year for me, and I broke. It was what I was focusing on for the first half of the year, which was things we're going to disintegrate. So that led to the actual, from that visualization to the actual manifestation of it, things breaking.
Yep.
So that's, but you have, it's hard to pull your mind out of there sometimes when you're in that state.
Absolutely.
And that's really the crux of the battle, is that when you're in that spin, how do you get yourself out of it? And when you're so focused on it, how do you get yourself unfocused out of it? Perhaps it's against your personality, against your identity.
Or
growing and evolving too fast past what is comfortable for you. So I got to slow this down. So your focus and your emotions will sabotage things so that you stay in your safe zone. And you have to decide when your brain and feelings over a long period of time are sabotaging you or helping you. First half of the year, they were totally sabotaging. And I tried to have people who helped me out with it, and it just didn't work.
Yep.
Maybe I just wasn't ready for it. But now next year, I will now be more mindful and more aware of the lessons I've learned this year about the things that I've lost and could have had. I could have had a great year. There were only a few changes that I had to make consistently to have made that happen. In this state I am
Let me ask you this.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Before, first of all, that was all great things. Let me ask you this. When you look at this image, what do you see?
I see a raven.
Okay, good, good. Coots, what do you see? Oh, you were on mute. Coots, what do you see?
Yeah, I see kind of
pelvis?
like an angel with wings, maybe.
Oh, an angel with wings. I thought you were going to say a sacroiliac joint for sure.
It's so funny. Of course, I saw the SI, but I'm like, well, that's not a freaking SI.
What did you see? The SI? Yeah.
Yeah, there's that coccyx.
Being a health professional, he sees a pelvis. Okay.
100%.
Here.
I saw a pelvis. I also see a jack-o'-lantern face. I can see the birds. I can see a bat.
Yeah. So the key is this is what's called an ink blot test, right? Somebody would be shown this image and say, I see a butterfly. Somebody with inner peace. Somebody who lacks inner peace would say, I see a murder scene, or I just see blood, right? So the key thing with that is, to add to kind of like really bottom line what Chris had said, the entire world is like an ink blot test. And what we're seeing is an expression of what's going on inside of us, right? It's not like the world is poking at our weak points. We project our weak points onto the world. And so what we want to do is, with all problems originating on the inside, we need to understand the dynamic that something in our mind is looking to be bothered, and we go along with it. There's always something to be disturbed about if you let it. But there's also always something to be happy about if you look for it. And if you don't put your conditions on your happiness, and you decide to be happy no matter what's going on, you can find a way to be happy. Right? So it's almost like there's an inner drama queen that narrates our world and tells us this shouldn't be like that, that shouldn't be like that. And that's usually what drives our reactivity, this inner drama queen. We'll never be free of our problems until we free ourselves from the part of our mind that keeps creating these quote unquote problems and defining and judging these things as problems. An enlightened person sees them as nothing but opportunities, and that's it. It's like an ink blot. I just see opportunities. So, true or false? You could just as easily train yourself to accept or learn to appreciate everything instead of finding a way to be bothered about everything. What do you think? True or false?
True.
Yeah. So it's just deciding that we take that control, and we can decide to reframe things in a way that serves us and benefits us. People can't really frustrate us, and circumstances can't frustrate us because they are external and they have no access to the inside of our minds where everything is going on. The moment in front of us is not bothering us. We bother ourselves about the way we judge, make personal, and decide that this moment shouldn't be this way.
Finding meaning.
Yeah, it's the meaning we're giving things. So we just have to really evaluate that dynamic, that attitude is a choice, but rarely do people evaluate and choose the most beneficial attitude. Reactivity is just defaulting to whatever intense attitude shows up and deciding that the first one to show up is the best one to show up. And then they get busy defending it when they shouldn't have accepted it in the first place, right? So that's kind of what this one is all about. So true or false? If we decided not to be bothered about something, we could find a way to be okay with it. We could find a perspective, we could find a way to be okay with things. So the problem is not really what's happening in front of us, whatever it is. It's what we tell ourselves about what's happening in front of us. It's how we narrate our life that gets us worked up. So put simply, the problem is inside of us, but that's a good thing because that means we can change it. So that's attitude number one. We'll go on to number two now. Anyone have any thoughts on number one they wanted to add?
Once you have some of those things start to happen, you can start to also rewrite your own narrative.
Yes. Great.
Once enough things change and break and evolve, you can start to rewrite your own narrative. So what you thought was going to happen is not happening, then you have to write a different story. And you can start writing any type of story you would like. It gives you a level of freedom that you didn't have before.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we'll get into that. We're gonna do a deep dive on that for sure. So hold that thought. We're gonna come back to that one and really deep dive that one. Number two is we look for outside solutions to inside problems. That's the other thing that fuels the reactivity. We tell ourselves something on the outside needs to change, so I'll feel better on the inside. Something needs to change at work, so I'll feel better. This person needs to change, so I'll feel better. I need to be making this much money a year, so I'll feel better. So we're looking for outside solutions to inside problems. That's the way we tend to do things. And we, time and time again, we get disillusioned as we realize this doesn't work. It just doesn't last. There's always a new battle of the day. There's always something else to be bothered about, you know? So, we have to decide that we'll find a way to be happy regardless of what's going on the outside. You know, because people have found happiness in worse situations than we can find ourselves in. You know, like I was reading about St. Augustine. You know, he was putting a lot of pressure on himself as a public speaker and everything else. He was very successful at the time. And there's like this homeless beggar who is purely just full of bliss and joy. And Augustine's like, he's got it more figured out than us. You know, we're putting so much pressure on ourselves, and all these things have to go well, so we'll be okay. This guy has nothing, and he's okay with everything. Right? So who's really free here? You know, so it's really like true freedom is freedom from our disturbing thoughts. We need to create, the inner solution is to create freedom from our disturbing thoughts, because no solution on the outside is really going to last. You know, everything on the outside is ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And there's no, that's not really the way to solve our problems in a lasting way. Anyone have any thoughts on this? How we seek external solutions to inside problems?
I think that's probably the norm for most people. Grab
Yeah.
a beer, right? Or whatever it might be.
Yeah, just drink away your sorrows, or, you know, or you might obsess that, you know, everything in my life will be better and I'll feel good if I can just bench press 400 pounds.
Well, it's funny. I have a client who's similar enough. He wanted to come in over and over again. We were working mental toughness, just beginning to, and he's like, I just need these workouts to feel better. And then eventually I caught on to like, are you using this as like a kick to finally stop being so mean to yourself? And so we had to sort of work into like, you can't rely on workouts to be a nice person. Like we have to sort of like work on that regularly. You should be able to deal with stress without barbells. And so that actually sort of sunk in really hard with him. And now he's much further along with that kind of stuff. Things don't react as well and or as easily. So
yeah, an inside out solution, not an outside in, which doesn't work. So it's like, what are you telling yourself to make you feel this way? Why don't we deal with that? You know,
what he justified also workouts, good for you. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. But you didn't resolve anything.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
I always think about like the grass is greener analogy. A lot of times there's problems. People are like, oh, the grass is green over there. They jump over there. You still have the same issues. You know, you haven't really fixed the core of things.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And the issue is a perspective. Embracing a perspective that life should be easier and different than it is. And we need to drop that opinion. That's the opinion that creates all this suffering. There's a gap, a reality gap. Life is this way, and we think it should be this way. The bigger that gap, the more likely we are to be triggered and reactive because we feel like we're being pulled apart by it. But the thing is, you know, is the whole world going to change for us? No, we should change ourselves instead, starting with interchange. You know, so it's like starting with, you know, reminding ourselves everything we need is within us now. So that's number 2. Now, number 3 is we need to stop being so opinion obsessed. Have you ever noticed the people with the most opinions are also the moodiest people and the people with the most problems? How many people have noticed that? The more opinions you have, the more messed up you're going to be. Right? Why? Because human opinions suck. They're so rooted in arrogance. Right? You know, and we the tendency to just put our opinion on top of everything around us and judge it as acceptable, unacceptable, right or wrong, like it's draining and it's stressful. It creates such tension. You know, and it's like, and it creates lots of frustrations. Opinions are the fuel for the disturbed mind. If we decide just not to judge things around us and to be opinion free, then we're just not engaging with the disturbed mind. You know, because life is never going to match up to all of our opinions of how things should be. We don't see across all space and time. We're not qualified to have all of these grandiose opinions on what should be happening in the world right now. It's just rooted in pure arrogance, you know? So, in addition, you know, it's human nature to only look for things that reinforces our opinions. Like, we're not looking to refine and purify our opinions. We're looking for confirmation bias. And that's why social media, they said, can sometimes be troublesome for the human psyche, because it's showing you stuff that just feeds your current opinions. And if those are wrong, you just get further steeped in it. And the tendency is for most people to impulsively defend their point of view and their opinion as though they're defending some high principle, when in truth, it's just defending arrogance, really. So one of my mantras that I tell myself is, you know, my opinions suck, your opinions suck, everyone's opinions suck. Okay, they all opinion, and this is something that is so liberating for people, so shocking, because it's like, oh, you should have an opinion on things. No, you shouldn't. Your opinions are how you disturb yourself so much in the first place, right? But we tend to overrate our own opinions. That's human nature. We think they're true because we think them. We don't realize how much human opinion is shaped by bias, misunderstanding, dogma, entitlement, expectation, preference, ignorance, arrogance. Like, it is just, our opinions are so psychologically damaged. You know, we tend to like criticize others because we think that they are right or we are wrong. We criticize others because we think they're wrong and we are right. But, you know, as Dale Carnegie would say, 99% of the time, there's no clear right or wrong. There's just multiple possibilities. You know, people confuse their opinions for facts. They go at it with the intensity of a fact. Then they confuse their feelings for facts and become resistant to real, truthful facts. You know, they tell themselves stories about what's going on and then confuse those stories for the actual truth. It all comes down to ego. People will defend the ego to their own peril, you know, or they can let go of what they think they know, right? So, anyone have any thoughts on these, Charmaine, on this whole point of view on opinion?
Oh, I think that's what social media is about a lot of times. Everybody thinks they have to share their own personal opinion. It kind of reminds me of this scene in When Harry Met Sally, where he kind of blows up on his friends about this encounter that he just had with his ex-wife. And, you know, Sally says to him, you're going to have to learn that you don't have to share every feeling that you have every moment that you have them. And, you know, there's a time and place for things, but a lot of times, like in that particular case, it was personal to him. It was completely not necessary and not helpful to what was going on. But people feel, I have these feelings, so I'm going to share it. And a lot of times it just causes disharmony.
Yeah, absolutely. Kurtz, do you have any thoughts on opinions?
I have no opinion. I'm just kidding.
Cool.
I mean, I do feel like that's just the sort of the norm again these days to be like, let me tell you what I think. And I think just thinking about giving my opinion, I always try to not, if I'm not asked for it, really, right? That seems to be kind of my go-to. And obviously that doesn't happen 24/7, but especially when it's things where people are going to ask me professional advice. I wait for them to come to me instead of me just being, oh yeah, didn't you know? You know, didn't you know this? And it's not a good way to get people's attention either.
Yeah, great. Love it. Now, true or false? If you didn't form any opinions about anything ever, would you get bothered as much?
No, definitely not.
Some people would argue with me. They'd say, well, if my low back hurts, I'm going to be bothered even though I didn't have an opinion. But the truth is, you had the opinion that your back pain was bad and got bothered by it, whereas bodybuilders create a burn in their low back doing low back extensions, and they think it's a good thing. So they don't get bothered. They're like, yeah, we love the burn, right? So then somebody might, you know, come you with me and say, yeah, but if you're being like whipped and tortured, like in the middle of the Colosseum or something in ancient Rome or whatever, you would find that bothersome. And I'd be like, no, that's still an opinion. There are some kinky people that are into whips and chains, and they actually like that stuff. So it's like, it's still, suffering is an opinion, so, and we can find freedom often from suffering by just having no opinion about what's happening or embracing it with radical acceptance that, so I would say that at this point, we need to come up with a healthy one-liner that can help us create healthy detachment from our opinions. This is where freedom can come. Create healthy detachment from our opinions. What could you say to anchor yourself before your opinions carry you away? So one thing might be, I might say, I don't know everything. There are so many sides to the same story, So that immediately helps us create detachment from whatever we think we know. You could say no opinions, no problems, or opinion free is the way to be, or my opinions suck no matter how good I think they are. Or I'm not qualified to judge the moment because I don't see across all space and time. Or, one that, and I often think of it, sometimes I'll take these one-liners and maybe I imagine putting them on mugs, but this one I would put on a mug. Opinions are like garbage juice. They always stink, so those are a number of different ways. And then I always remind myself, remember how good things can turn out when I don't get my way. Like a lot of times we thought, I want this to happen, I want that to happen. Things don't unfold that way. We get something better instead. So I'm like, yeah, my opinions could be so wrong for me. Right? Or there are no accidents in the universe. Gets us to accept the moment in front of us. So anyway, those are some thoughts on some opinion anchors.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's funny, actually, Strange was here a few weeks ago. We did Houdini on Halloween. Right. And it makes me think about Ted Lasso. He's good with the one-liners. And he always says, stay curious, not judgmental. And I like that idea because if you're staying curious, then you're not necessarily, hey, say I have an opinion. Instead, you're like, okay, that's interesting. And you're like forming opinions and staying curious about it as opposed to be like, no. I know this one. You're wrong. So I like the whole stay curious. That's probably a mantra for me.
Yeah. I like mine. I use a 3-step mantra. Hold my beliefs lightly, test and see what is true, and stay curious. 3-step mental mobility.
Hold belief lightly, test and see what was true. I like that.
Yeah, use truth through experience rather than blind belief. So, okay, so attitude number 4 on overcoming reactivity is we can be so wrong and think we are so right. Okay, we need to know this. Have you ever had an interaction with somebody who had a completely wrong opinion, but couldn't be convinced otherwise and wouldn't change the subject? Oh my gosh, and how fun was that, right? And how many times in your life have you been wrong about something? Throw it in the chat. Just take a guess. How many times in your life have you been wrong about something? I'm just hitting the 9 button over and over and over. I think I've typed in like I don't know how much it is. I don't even know how much I've been wrong. I've been wrong so many times. Like it's comical how many times I've been wrong in my life. What makes me so sure I'm right this time with this thought I have, right? Like we can't even count how many times we've been wrong. So why do we get so stuck on defending our point of view? Right? So here's some examples. What color is this sweater? Green, right? Oh my gosh, the sweater is green. We can be so confident it's like an olive green. We would probably bet lots of money. The truth is, it's anything but green. Science tells us it appears that way because it's rejecting the green wavelength. Green is not inherent. This sweater is everything but green. Okay? We're so wrong. I could drop my mouse. Which direction did it drop? People could say, oh, it went down, of course. Truth is, it went sideways. Based on the rotation of the earth and the seasons we're in, it's more like, it went towards the center of the earth. It could have gone up, could have gone sideways, not necessarily down, right? So we can be so wrong and think we're so right. And sometimes it's healthy for us to remind ourselves and use some humility hygiene and not overrate our own point of view so much. And that's where people have unquestioning loyalty to their thoughts. And they think that their thoughts are facts because they them. Without realizing how psychologically damaged and contaminated our thoughts are by wrong desires, wrong thoughts, wrong feelings, wrong fears, wrong beliefs, wrong perspectives, wrong attitudes, and our insecurities. And it all gets mixed up in there like a tossed salad, and we come out with some sort of a thought. So we don't want to get addicted to every single word the mind says. Because if your mind's like, I don't like that person, I want to get out of here. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking for reasons to not like that person. Or that person's fake. If you say that person's fake, like your mind says it, you go along with it. Well, you just closed off an opportunity to have a connection with what might be an extraordinary soul that you just judged incorrectly, right? Or, so there's all kinds of different ways that we can come up with these inaccurate points of view. Anyways, and let's think of some examples. Can you think of something you believed was absolutely true and later found out was wrong? Can you think of something? How about
how about not squatting with knees over toes?
Not don't let the knees go over the toes when you squat. Yeah. That used to be a big thing. It's like, do not let that happen. Yet, we go up and down stairs and our knees are going past our toes. And I believe the studies, they'd remove the cartilage from the knee joints when they did the study to try to make the case that you shouldn't do that. And so the research was flawed to begin with. Yeah, that's a good example. Charmaine, can you think of a time you believed something was so true and later found out it was wrong?
Yeah. I remember having a big argument with a friend, and this is like a coding thing, but I was absolutely certain that this issue was not in my code. And he was absolutely certain it was this one particular type of issue. And it ended up my code was pulling in other stuff, and that's where the error was. So in many ways, I was wrong. Even though I knew what was in my code was still pulling in the thing that had the error.
There you go. Yeah. Technical mistake at work, and you were so convinced it wasn't you, right? But remember, our opinions suck. My opinion is it's you, not me, right? Chris, can you think of a time you believed something was so true and later found out it was wrong?
I must believe a lot of things that I think are true or wrong because I really can't think of anything.
Okay, well, I mean, there's a lot we could think of. Maybe one time you thought Bill Cosby was a family-oriented and wholesome like father figure, and then all of his sex crimes came out, right? Maybe you thought that one,
maybe everyone had I mean, people do build their public image to be one way when they're really another.
Yep. Right? You might think institutionalized religion was a path to greater truth and understanding. A lot of people think that, and then they realize it just led to confusion and disappointment. And maybe it vilified every other religion out there and tried to create a war with everyone. And, so maybe at one point you really believed there was a bunny that hopped around your house once a year, hiding chocolate eggs. Maybe it was a long time ago, but maybe you once really held that point of view really strongly. Or maybe you had a point of view about somebody in your life that you thought you could trust them. And then they had a great betrayal on you, right? You might have been convinced, I can trust this person, and then it's like, oh my gosh, look what they really are deep down, So there can be a lot of times. So we need to create healthy detachment and hold our beliefs lightly, no matter how sure we are. There's enough, and we want to have a good anchor that can remind us of this. Mine is, I tell myself the universe is infinite, and so is my ignorance. And that's a one-liner I use all the time. And I even made it my bio for my TikTok account. That's all it says about my TikTok. It says nothing else. It says, The universe is infinite, and so is my ignorance. I don't even talk about what content is on my TikTok. That was all my bio was. It was just reminding myself. And then I see it every time I log in, right? We could say,
I think you're talking about having healthy skepticism.
yeah, healthy skepticism to what we believe, for sure. We could tell ourselves I've been wrong before and I'll be wrong again, or we could tell ourselves my perceptions aren't right, even though it feels that way. They're not always right. Or I remind myself of this one, I have an infinite capacity to fool myself. I've made countless wrong judgments thinking they were right. And another one I tell myself is, I don't really know what's good for me. Things I thought were good for me ended up not being not so good. And things I thought wouldn't be good for me ended up being a good thing. I don't know what's good for me anymore. Forget it. I'm just going to kind of try to embrace life. Right?
Well,
So
you brought up a good point, Brendan, in that what you believe is good for you now in this situation may not be the same good thing for you in the next situation.
mm-hmm.
And I think when you're talking about what works for you now may not work for you in the future. And I think that's a good level of skepticism to have. That there are no beliefs that are absolute, except for maybe, not even gravity, because you can fly in a ship that in an airplane that might drop, 10,000 feet suddenly, and all of a sudden there is no gravity.
Yeah.
So you have to understand what your beliefs are and how they're affecting the current situation, and that it may not be the same way in the next situation.
We're going to go into that next. You just transitioned us into reactivity obedience school. The way I look at it is like this. Reactivity is like training a dog, like obedience training for your dog, because your mind and emotions will try to take off after a squirrel or whatever, and you got to pull it back on the leash. So this is how you train the reactive mind. Okay, but I tell people when it comes to reactivity obedience school, we want to train ourselves to deal with ourselves. Start with small, easy steps. Take it one day at a time and be patient with yourself. And just know that it might be a little bit uncomfortable to do this kind of work. It might even be painful because we have to go against our natural tendencies. But know that this is the pain that ends pain. Know that this is absolutely worth it to be the ruler of your mental kingdom and not be enslaved by these reactive energies, which are usually the source behind all kinds of disharmony we create in life. So step one, 3 steps. Step one, just be a witness to your thoughts. That's it. Just witness it. Pay attention to the part of you that's trying to get bothered about stuff. Because most of the time we blindly go along with the inner drama queen. We want to control that involuntary spasm of reactivity. Don't just go along and when you feel the urge. Try to almost create some distance from it. I tell people reactivity is like defecating your pants in public. It stinks for everybody. You don't just go along with those kinds of biological urges. You shouldn't go along with emotional urges either. They also stink, So we need to do potty training for your emotions here instead of going into all these stinking emotions. So don't get absorbed in the inner drama queen. Separate yourself. See the drama queen doing its thing. Just notice what your mind is doing and how it tells stories and gets worked up. You don't need to do anything at this point. Just be the one who notices that the mind is creating thoughts and you are aware of these thoughts, almost like an outside observer. Notice that these thoughts often have something to say about everything you see and everything that's going on. It's narrating. Just notice it. Create healthy detachment from it. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda says that thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. So if you go along with that perspective, it means that not a thought you think originates within you. We more pick it up like a radio receiver. So you've merely caught a current of thought that was flowing through the universe, but you can let it just flow on through. You don't have to get absorbed in it, right? So that's number one. Just practice being a witness to your thoughts. Too often people are getting enmeshed with their thoughts. Anyone have any thoughts on witnessing your thoughts?
I think being aware of your thoughts is very, and to me, it always was the most fundamental step. Awareness is the most key portion of it. Once you have awareness, it's kind of up to you. Do you want to keep this going, or are you going to, step up and be better, or think of a different route? Or so, yeah, I find just practicing the awareness to your thoughts will go a long way.
Yes, self-awareness is the key to self-regulation. Love it. Yeah, and it starts with that most people lack the self-awareness, right? So that's step one. Step two in reactivity obedience school, practice discernment to build emotional maturity. So give yourself freedom by deciding not to blindly go along with the thoughts that show up. Don't cooperate with the inner drama queen. Or instead of drama queen, we can call it your inner Karen. Karen is like this new age term for someone that just gets upset about everything and has a holier than thou attitude and tells everyone what they're doing wrong and just gets mad at everybody, right? So don't go along with your inner Karen, like hold no judgment or opinion. Be curious, as you said, Coots. Have a beginner's mind, so just start there and then question the accuracy of your thoughts and opinions. Discern, is this a good thing to be telling myself? That question there, if you take nothing away from anything we've said so far, if you just tell yourself, is this a good thing to be telling myself when a thought comes to mind? That's like half the battle. And if you can take it a step further, there's 4 quick checks you can do. First, do a thought check. Is it right for me to be thinking this way? Is this the truth, or am I telling myself a story? Do I have all the facts? That's your thought check. Most of the disturbing thoughts can't even pass that filter. Next is a feeling check. Is it right for me to be feeling this way? What do I have to believe to be feeling this way right now, and is it really true? A lot of times people's emotions are not rooted in the truth of the situation. They're telling themselves a story about what's going on and getting worked up as a result. We shouldn't honor that emotion. It was wrong to be thinking that way, and therefore it was wrong to be feeling that way. And then number 3 is an outlook check. What else could all of this mean? What's a beneficial way to look at this? Is there a more empowering and truthful way to look at this? So just reframe it in a way that serves us. And then this is a really important one. Step 4 is a choices check. Think before you act. Okay? Imagine how your different alternative choices will play themselves out and evaluate them before you decide on one. Moral imagination. You're morally imagining, is this going to create more suffering and more problems for other innocent people and everything else, right? So, what are my choices? How will each choice play out? What will be the ultimate cost and benefit of each choice, right? So those are the 4 checks. And then step number 5, if in doubt, refer yourself out. If you're still kind of unsure what to make of a situation, get outsider perspective from someone who can help you perceive things with a greater understanding. Here's why this matters. People who get reactive have a very high tendency to develop the wrong perceptions. Okay? In the presence of anger, passion, or emotion of any kind, there is a bias that increases likelihood of coming to the wrong perceptions and conclusions about what's going on. All right? So we don't want to rely on our own best thinking, especially if we've gotten reactive. This is how we get into all of our messes in life. All of our messes in life have been the result of our own best thinking. Sometimes we need a spotter, somebody who can show us a more successful way of looking at the situation. Otherwise, we continue to struggle through the labyrinth of false reasoning and faulty logic. And it just plays, and people never find a way out of that labyrinth. So have a wise and worthy teacher, mentor, coach, or friend that you can run yourself by so they can help you clarify, purify, and refine those thoughts and attitudes and help you come to a greater understanding. Most of the time, we have to fundamentally distrust our own perceptions and ask ourselves, who can objectively assess all of this? And then ask them if you made the right or wrong choices, right or wrong conclusions on the situation and why. And stop defending our own points of view. Like, that's the key thing behind reactivity, is just having this dark sense of loyalty to our point of view, even though our point of view has proven time and time again to be so misleading. Just acknowledge that we are all very, very incompetent in this area. We're not properly trained. We come up with wrong points of view. We make mistakes all the time. It's part of being human. So, those are the different checks. Let's run through an example of this, okay? Here's an example. We'll call this example moody girlfriend. Okay? Imagine you have a new girlfriend and your best friend tells you, hey man, I'm kind of having some troubles getting along with your new girlfriend because, she gets in these really bad moods and she's taking it out on all of us and doing some things that are really uncomfortable for everybody. And, we want to get along with her better, and this isn't really a judgment on her because, it's just a behavioral pattern and we can all change our patterns and everything else. And I just want to get along. I want some help in creating cooperation with her. And her better than us and we want to make things work. So, do you have any suggestions on how we can handle this? Right? So let's say a friend comes to you and says that. Then you listen to them. And then you both agree, let's just keep this confidential for now until we decide, how we're going to move forward in this situation to create harmony within the group. You'll get back to him. You'll be like, don't worry, I'll get back to you with some thoughts. Now, imagine the next day you wake up and you're just in a lousy mood. No reason in particular. Maybe you ate some expired yogurt. Maybe it was from over drinking the night before, whatever. You wake up, you're in a lousy mood. And because you feel lousy, you decide there must be a good reason for it. And you think, what's the last thing I did? I talked with my friend. I must be in a bad mood because he did something bad. So now you blame your friend for the way that you feel right now because you feel bad. He must have done something bad, offended you, your girlfriend, and attacked your characters. Okay? You start to jump to conclusions. Now, follow it through. Let's go through the thought check. Well, first of all, we could ask ourselves, is this a good thing to be telling myself? That my friend intentionally attacked our characters? Is that a good thing to be telling myself? What's the background with this person? We help each other out. We're supporting each other. It makes no sense. What would be his motive? Nothing. How does it make any sense? And, his motive was to try to create cooperation, and he did it confidentially, right? So let's go through thought check. Like to be thinking this way. While I'm getting worked up, we ask ourselves, is it right to be thinking this way? Well, when I double check the fact he wasn't actually attacking characters. He had a private, confidential conversation with the intent of creating better cooperation, and he talked about patterns, not people. He wasn't attacking characters or anything. It's wrong for me to be thinking this thought. Then we go into feeling check. Is it right for me to be feeling attacked or offended just because I don't feel good? And, we might say, well, look, my feelings aren't facts. There's no evidence that he was attacking anything. He was sharing something in confidence. Maybe I'm just feeling lousy because of something else going on. Maybe my blood sugar's low. Maybe I'm just it has nothing to do with this. They might be correlated, but correlation does not equal causation. Then we go into number 3, outlook check. What's a better outlook? The outlook is here, he's actually trying to strengthen the connections with me and my new moody girlfriend, right? He's actually, in a discreet way, trying to get my help creating better cooperation. This is not betrayal. He's not a bad person. He's not out to get us. He's actually being a good friend, and he did it. I should be grateful. He actually cares enough to try to create harmony, right? So then we go into choices check. So you see how we're starting to clarify and purify and refine these reactive thoughts? Choices. Let's go into 3 things I can do right now. Option 1, I can tell my girlfriend all about the conversation. Now, how will this play out? She will probably get standoffish and offended and try to turn me against my friend. She'll probably say some pretty harsh things to him, and she's going to say pretty harsh things to other people about him, and she's going to probably try to turn everyone against him, to try to save face. She'll say he's the crazy one, he's the bad one, to take attention off of her completely. And, it'll be 100% cost because you're going to lose your other friend. It's not going to help her, and it's not going to help me, right? Nobody's going to get any better from that, right? It's just purely being combative. Option 2, I can circle back with my friend and gain further clarity on anything I might be confused on. Be like, hey, look, we had that conversation. Can you please just explain it to me again? What outcome we want to achieve from this? And, let's just run through it again. I need to make sure I get this all clear because it's kind of a sensitive subject. So we can just go back, circle back and double check before we act on anything. Option number 3, I can just encourage my girlfriend to be a little bit more friendly and polite in a gentle way. It may not work right away, but at least I can commit to helping her be a better person. So there's 3 options, right? So right from there, you kind of see the way things might play out. And it's like, what option appears to be the best and what option appears to be the worst? What do you guys think?
I like number 2 right now, because I think if you're already having that reactive kind of thought, it's good to go back and hear the original language again before you make any decisions about how to handle things.
Yeah. Because when emotions get intense, you perceive things wrongly. Double check. It's a great option. And if you don't agree with anything, be like, hey, are you willing to consider that, maybe my friend was moody because, they just went through like something at work, or they just had some serious family problems going on. Would you be willing to consider that maybe this was just a bad episode for them? Sure. Sorry, I didn't know the whole situation. Thank you for helping me clarify, and it would have been done. Right? Excellent. Coots, any thoughts on this?
No, I like what Charmaine was saying there for sure. Just double check, right?
Yeah.
I'm about to burn this guy's house down. Wrong house, right? Like you should just at least know for sure, before you get any kind of stern reactions that you're pretty sure you're right, at least.
Yeah, and especially if in this example we say that the agreement is to circle back, right? Just circle back, right? So it's like, but reactive energy will get you to try to create a war, right? But that's, what do you win if you win that war? If you win, you lose. And if you lose, you lose. It's a lose-lose situation. It's what they call the fool's journey, right? Which is what reactive energy gets us into. So that's kind of how we want to play it out. So remember, we want to remember, check, is it right to be thinking this way? Feeling check, is it right to be feeling this way? Outlook check, what else could this mean? What's a more beneficial way to look at this? Choices check. How will my different choices play out? Let me evaluate them and choose the best one. And then when in doubt, refer yourself out. Get some higher perspective from somebody. Those things right there, that's a hack on overcoming anger, wrath, reactivity, all of those things. It diffuses it. It gives us time. It lets those energies dissipate. So that's point number 2, is that, we want to practice discernment. That's how you do it. It's a skill you learn just like anything else. Just keep making yourself answer those questions. Might be uncomfortable, but there's going to be, how much more pain is there going to be if you never do that work? There's going to be incredible pain you're going to create by going along with the reactive energy, which is going to make you betray people you care about and do all kinds of regrettable things. Step 3 is this. Keep pulling the mind back like a dog that wanders off, because your mind is going to try to wander off. I don't know if any of you have done this. Have you ever taken a dog on a walk and it'll find something like dead to roll around in? Like if there's a dead bird or something, it'll just roll in it. And it's like, what the heck? Dogs will roll in stinky things, but if you let your mind wander off, it'll roll around in some pretty stinky thoughts too. The more you keep pulling the mind back, the easier it gets. And the way you do it is you just remind it, like, I'm the master in here. We're not going along with any of these kinds of thoughts because we know where that leads us. We're here to help people instead. Remember, we're here to help people. We're not here to get moody and worked up. So when the mind keeps wandering off, there's a number of ways to bring it back. Focus on your breathing. Focus on relaxing and not engaging with those disturbing energies, right? Count to 10. Use a mantra. Like you could just tell yourself, you could sing that song, Let It Go from Frozen. You could repeat the Gandalf line, this too shall pass. You could just say, I am peace, and just repeat it over and over. You could decide not to judge the moment. Don't judge the moment and how much you like it. Like practice holding no opinion. Keep your preferences out of it. Just remember how wrong your opinions can be. Or you can talk yourself out of it. You can say, look, no more bad moods. Or how else am I going to be able to help people? I can't help people if I get into moods. What am I here for? Am I here to be a spaz and disturb people? Or am I here to love and help people? Or we could tell ourselves, no matter what happens, these things happened. Why? Because it just happened. Clearly, these things happened. Or we could tell ourselves, we could just trust the big picture and say, whatever is going on is exactly what needs to happen. There are no accidents in the universe. Right? So there's a lot of different, and then one of the ones, Coots, the one we like, the Houdini, the 3 questions. Do you remember them?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. What's good about it? What can be learned? And how do we make it better?
Perfect. That's a solution to any problem in life. Just 3 questions.
Huge.
How can you make it better? Yeah, so it's like we want to be able to evaluate it. And these are the different ways we can pull the reactive energy back. And it's a skill you learn, just like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. If you don't do it, you just get better at getting bothered. And then how fun is it to be you? It's like, how fun being miserable? If we don't want to put in the work, there's much more pain in the end. So, and sometimes I tell myself, don't be so life obsessed. This reality is overrated. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. He even said, don't be so life obsessed. This isn't the place for us to lay down our dreams of perfection because everything in this reality just fades away, falls apart, or goes away. So we need to have a healthy detachment to what's going on in life. If we get too attached and absorbed, like as if we're going to live here forever, then it intensifies our emotions when things don't go our way. So keep one foot in eternity. And so anyway, that's the reactivity boot camp, reactivity training school. So let's go into some final thoughts, key takeaways.
What was point 3? I think I missed it.
Oh, point 3 was to just practice pulling the mind back like a dog.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I liked your working at stopping reactive energy.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a different way of saying it. I kind of like that.
Yeah, it'll bubble up. Just don't go along with it because you know where it'll take you. It brings out our worst, really.
Yep.
Right? So really practice hanging on to your inner peace, like hanging on to a rugby ball. Don't let anyone cause a fumble. Day in and day out, you just hang on to your inner peace until you make it to the end zone of life. I think that's a great way to practice the sport of being human. It's really a sport of hanging on to inner peace, and that helps us be the best version of ourselves. Some people think it's good to be reactive, and that thought itself is a trap. They think it's like there's some sort of virtue to it. Like, oh, you got to stand up for yourself. You got to express yourself. You got to communicate. And it's like, no, this is just immature self-determinism masquerading as something more elevated. Nothing more than that. It's nothing more than childishness, right? So once we zoom out and see it in its totality. So key takeaways. Chris, do you have any key takeaways from tonight? He's on mute.
Yes, I enjoyed the conversation tremendously. I think being able to open up your aperture and being able to take a step back from everything is a lot of what you were talking about. And I think that's a very important skill to have, especially when your emotional programs are running. And sometimes the emotional programs run out without you.
Yeah.
But being able to step back and
Mm-hmm.
is so much more important. And I think that's a lot of what these techniques help you get from 1,000 feet up to 30,000 feet. And once you do that, you can see things differently and disengage from it emotionally enough to not let it to let situations escalate or to let your emotions cloud judgment or critical thinking.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. So, one of the best books on this subject is The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. Also, Living Untethered, Beyond the Human Predicament. And I got a quote here from Michael Singer from Beyond the Human Predicament, Living Untethered. He said, "Someday you're going to remember this discussion. Something is going to wake up inside and you'll know just what we've been talking about. You'll observe the energy pulling on you and you will try to let go. For the first time, you'll realize what is actually happening. You are struggling with yourself. You are both sides of the struggle. Part of you wants to let go, but part still wants to give in to the pull of that energy." Think about that. Think about that. This is going to come to us. Now, Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda said, to do what you want to do is easy, right? Because a lot of times we want to it feels good to just release that energy on whoever happens to be around, right? To do what you want to do is easy. To do what you should do is difficult, but it brings you freedom. So we want to kind of see it from that higher level, that we think before we act, that we rule our life by sound reasoning rather than impulse, reactivity, and unthinking habit. Because most of the regrettable actions in our life story are the result of forces we didn't bother to evaluate. We want to use the right guiding principles as we make our life choices. And an analogy I will apply from Asha Nayaswami, author of the book Light Bearer, author of the book Ask Asha, and Swami Kriyananda as we've known him. An analogy she uses, applies to reactivity, is think of it this way. You have only one enemy, and the enemy is the tendency of your mind to fall into this dark sense of self. And you've got to treat it like a life-threatening emergency to which you must respond, because reactivity can destroy your life and everything precious to you, including your relationships. It can destroy your joy. It can destroy your inner peace. So every time those reactive thoughts come to you, you have to act like a venomous snake has sunk its fangs into you, and you must immediately tear it off and give yourself the anti-venom, which could be using discernment, counting to 10, breathing, practice relaxing. Ask yourself, are my thoughts right? Are my feelings right? Give yourself a positive reminder, a mantra, a prayer, whatever it takes, but don't delay an instant. Do it right in that minute, treat it as a life-threatening emergency, because the tendency for your mind to go back to this dark reactive energy is fueled by nothing other than the sheer habit of allowing it to do that and going along with it. It's just sheer habit, and you can create a new habit, but you must put the life-threatening emergency level of effort to do so. And with that kind of intensity and dedication, you'll be shocked how fast you can change. The price of freedom is to do the work necessary to detach from the reactive mind. Otherwise, we're enslaved, right? And know that it will be uncomfortable to disengage from the reactive urges, because the underlying fears and insecurities, we're all stored up with pain. It can be painful to let it all go, but this is the pain that ends all pain. So anyway, it is worth the effort to go to battle with the reactive energy, which is sometimes called wrath. It's considered one of the 7 deadly sins, or anger. That's really how it plays out. I'm just using the term reactivity, but that's how it can also play out. All right. Awesome chat out there today, everybody. And if you've been joining us on the recording, which is posted after the fact, then we're all kindred spirits here in this human journey, just trying to make the best of helping our positive tendencies to win the battles inside us against those negative downward pulling tendencies, and to achieve the goal of character perfection, so we can all attain some real long-term happiness, rather than just getting caught up in the anguishing monotony of the day in and day out of human life, trying to see things from a bigger perspective and what we're really here to do, and self-realize our higher potential. And it's an honor and pleasure to have you join us on that journey. So let's do a big go team on 3. Fist bump, group hug, then we're out. Everyone ready? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, go team!
Go
Go
team.
team.
Go team. Love you guys.
Have a good
Love you
week, you
guys.
guys.
Love and respect.
Stuff.
Fabulous week, guys.
Love you guys. Great
Bye.
stuff.
Be well. Bye.